Snow swallowed the world in white silence when Sierra Langford heard the words no stranger expects to hear in the middle of a lonely mountain road. A small voice trembled through the freezing dusk, a voice so fragile it seemed woven from fear itself. "Ma'am, I can't find my daddy." And without warning, Sierra's entire life shifted, quietly, irrevocably, as though fate had been waiting at the edge of that forest just for her. The evening had begun in calm stillness. The frosted mountains stretched endlessly before her as she drove, her SUV humming along the narrow road. The world outside blurred into shades of gray and white, the sky dimming into early winter twilight. Sierra had come here seeking nothing but silence. After a year of corporate battles and a breakup that had drained the last of her trust, she needed stillness, real, untouched stillness. Her phone was on airplane mode. Her assistant had strict orders not to disturb her unless catastrophe struck. And for the first time in years, she allowed her breath to steady in her chest. But peace cracked like thin ice when a streak of red darted across the road. The brake screamed. Snow exploded upward. Her heart slammed. The SUV lurched violently and skidded to a halt. And in the trembling beam of her headlights stood a tiny girl dressed in a thin sweater and a red dress far too small for the cold. Sierra ran toward her without thinking, boots digging into the snow. The girl shivered uncontrollably, her cheeks flushed pink, her lips nearly blue. Tears fell quickly and silently until suddenly they weren't silent at all. "I can't find my daddy," she sobbed, clinging to Sierra with desperate, frozen fingers. "He said he'd be right back. He never came." Sierra didn't know why the word daddy hit her so hard, whether it was the hollow fear in the child's voice or the storm of loneliness Sierra had been barely holding back. But something inside her chest cracked open, softening her in a way she hadn't expected. She wrapped the girl in a blanket, held her close, and murmured, "You're safe now. I promise." She meant it more fiercely than she understood. The girl's name was Maisie. Guided by her small, trembling voice, Sierra drove deeper into the woods until they reached a modest cabin tucked between snow-heavy pines. Its windows glowed faintly with lamplight, though the house itself felt cold and still. Inside, it was tidy, lived in, filled with the gentleness of a home made by hand. A photo on the table showed a man, a young father, holding a toddler between himself and a smiling woman with bright eyes and braided hair. Maisie's mother. Gone now, Sierra would later learn. The cabin groaned under the growing storm. The fire was out. The cold pressed in through the wood. Maisie ate soup with slow, tiny spoonfuls that made Sierra's heart twist. And when Sierra asked where her father went, Maisie's voice wavered. "He went to get firewood down by the broken tree." Darkness thickened outside. Worry tightened inside. Eventually, instinct overcame hesitation. Sierra bundled Maisie in the blanket again and carried her into the storm. They followed the girl's whispered directions through the shadowed forest until the distorted pine came into view. That was where they found him. Caleb Clark lay half buried in fresh snow, wood scattered beside him, blood dried along his hairline. One arm crooked awkwardly. His chest rising only faintly. Maisie's scream broke the world open. Sierra dropped to her knees, checked for a pulse, finding one, weak but present. She tried dragging him but managed only a few feet before exhaustion swallowed her strength. She grabbed Maisie, held her tight, and ran for help. A patrol officer arrived like a godsend. Together they carried Caleb back to the cabin, laid him on the couch, warmed him, cleaned the wound, wrapped him carefully, and waited. Maisie fell asleep with her tiny hand clutching her father's. Sierra watched over them both, fire crackling weakly as night deepened. Morning arrived slowly. Caleb woke with a pained groan, confusion in his eyes until they found Maisie curled beside him. Relief softened him instantly. Gratitude flooded him when he saw Sierra. He spoke little at first. His voice was deep, quiet, steady, like a man used to enduring without complaint. He explained how he had left the city 2 years before after losing his wife. How he worked whatever jobs he could find to raise Maisie. How life here was simple but honest. Sierra listened, drawn in by his quiet resilience. She wasn't sure if she admired him or envied him. Snow thickened outside. She was stuck there a while longer. And she didn't mind. By morning, Caleb was moving slowly but steadily, cooking breakfast with practiced hands. Maisie giggled beside him. They made paper snowflakes with Sierra. Emptiness she had been carrying for years loosened, piece by piece, in that tiny wooden home. When she finally tried to leave, Maisie placed a patchwool mitten in her hand. A mitten Caleb had mended himself. "It's warm," she said. "It's for you." Sierra's breath caught. Back at her upscale rental cabin, city calls pulled her like chains. Her assistant insisted she return early. Board politics demanded her presence. Investors waited. But nothing in that world felt like the little mitten resting in her lap. She packed. She drove. She reached the fork toward the airport and paused. Why did her chest hurt? Why did leaving feel wrong? She reversed. Turned. Returned to the forest instead of the city. Returned to the cabin where she had felt something she couldn't yet name. Caleb and Maisie were shoveling snow when she arrived. They looked up, surprised. Sierra stepped out, brushing snow from her hair. "I left something unfinished," she said with a small, shy smile. Maisie ran to her. Caleb's eyes softened. That afternoon unfolded in gentle warmth. A walk through the quiet woods. Breakfast cooked together. Quiet conversations by the fire. In the soft glow of night, after Maisie fell asleep, Sierra and Caleb spoke quietly, about happiness, loneliness, fear, and the strange way life redirects people to exactly who they're meant to meet. When Caleb gave her the small wooden cup with her name etched unevenly along the side, Sierra felt her heart stumble. "You belong here now," he said softly. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the urge to argue. She felt the truth of it. Days passed more easily. Snow fell again. They settled into a peaceful rhythm, Sierra helping with chores she'd never done before, Caleb teaching her small things like how to split kindling or fix a loose hinge, Maisie weaving herself around Sierra's legs like a tiny, hopeful shadow. The stillness Sierra had searched for wasn't found in solitude. It was found here. One night, as the fire burned low and storm winds rattled the windows, Sierra leaned her head against the back of the couch and watched Caleb gently tuck Maisie into bed. He kissed the girl's forehead, whispered something she couldn't hear, then dimmed the lamp. He stepped into the living room, and for a moment, they simply looked at each other across the soft glow of the cabin. Something settled between them, unhurried, warm, quietly inevitable. She didn't move away when he came to sit beside her. She didn't look away when his fingers brushed hers. Outside, snow fell in quiet spirals, blanketing the world in fresh beginnings. Inside, Sierra Langford, CEO, strategist, untouchable powerhouse, felt her defenses melt like frost against fire. And as she leaned gently against Caleb's shoulder, Maisie sleeping peacefully in the next room, Sierra finally understood the truth she had been running from for years. Sometimes, life doesn't hand you the things you think you want. Sometimes, it leads you, slowly, gently, relentlessly, to the things you need. She came to the mountains seeking silence. What she found instead was the quiet beginning of a life she had never dared imagine. And she wasn't planning on leaving it behind.